Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Growth Mindset. Guys, I'm your host, Irshad, and today we have a very unique and a special guest with us. Her name is Dr. Shalini Lal. Now, Shalini has done her schooling from DPS, she has done her degree from St. Stephen's, she has done her MBA from IIM Ahmedabad, and her PhD in UCLA, Organization Expert. Right? So Shalini has also written a book called as The Secret Life of Organizations. Now she is an expert and holds over 25 years of experience in organization change. She works with companies that are small to all the way to the big corporations. She personally consults CEOs and a few hand chosen leaders in terms of improving the organization. And she personally works as a consultant to all these companies wherein she could identify the loopholes in the company, improve the culture of the company, anything basically that inspires and motivates people to do their right work. So, without further ado, let's talk to Shanli, understand more about what exactly happens in an organization. Be you could look at it from an employee's perspective, or you could also look at it from the CEO's perspective. So, let's get to it. People know you in the organization industry wherein you know what you do, but for people who don't kind of know you, could you just give a quick introduction about what you do?
My pleasure. So, for those who have no familiarity with organizational development, what organizational development is, it's the science of helping people and organizations be more effective. So the science itself draws upon many of the different social sciences. So, for instance, to understand what makes people more effective in their individual capacity, there are learnings from the field of psychology or social psychology. Then you want to understand what makes teams more effective. And you look at learnings from social psychology, from anthropology, from sociology. Then you look at what it takes to make organizations more effective, and you're working with complexity sciences, system theory, anthropology, sociology. So it's, in a sense, how do we use all that we know in the different human connected social sciences and use them to help people and organizations be more effective. So that's really what organizational development is about. I've been in this field for a very, very long time now, since 92.
Wow, that's a lot of time, indeed.
And I got interested in it back in school. So, my career has from then on sort of stayed the course. And now I write a lot in this field, both articles and books and LinkedIn posts.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yes.
So I different formats for magazines, books, etc., etc. I speak a lot at a lot of the OD forums, and then I consult. So that's I work in the organizational development space.
Okay. And where were you born? Can you give us a little insight about your background?
I was born right here in Delhi.
Okay. Okay. And you did your schooling also from Delhi?
There's a school called Delhi Public School,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the flagships of Delhi Public School was DPS RK Puram. So those who were, my generation would know it as the place which was one of the most competitive, I think, schools at that time. And to give you a glimpse of how competitive is competitive, in 12th grade, I got in some test, I got some 85%, and I cried all the way back home because it was the lowest marks in class.
Wow. 85 was the lowest. I just wonder, my story isn't that great because I was happy even when I got 50.
Our school was so competitive that AIMS, for their medical entrance program had 20 seats. And our
Wow.
batch took 11 of those. One school from all over India took 11 of the 20. So it just gives you a sense of what competitive environment
Yeah,
that was.
absolutely, absolutely. And what about your degree? I believe you've done masters in the Wharton School.
Later. So I went to Stephens after that, Stephens Economics.
Mm-hmm.
And then straight from Stephens Eco, I went to IIM Ahmedabad in in the early 90s. I think it's equally true today. The IIMs were like pretty much your
I've heard stories. Yes,
make your career kind of a move.
true.
Uh, I mean, I went to IIM pretty much because I got it.
Oh, okay.
As simple as that. I really knew nothing. I knew
Okay.
nothing about the school, and I knew nothing about why I was going into business. And I got in because the faculty who interviewed was not very business oriented. They just wanted to know, spur of the moment, solve a problem which they would hand over to you. They weren't interested in whether you were really interested in management or any of that.
So you're talking about, after your IAM PhD is what you've done?
Yeah, so when I was at IIM, and to be honest, I would say don't go to business school without work experience because
Okay.
really understand half of what's being discussed because you got in, you did CAT really well, you did your focus group interview well, so you got accepted. Now, that doesn't mean the same thing as really getting the most out of a program. That's a whole other
Correct.
environment. So, someone like me who went straight from Stephens to IMA, neither had a very clear understanding of, why I was there beyond the fact that I had gotten, nor did I have any particular idea of what I wanted to do after that. So I would spend many hours sitting in the library, just leafing through magazines. And, the kinds of magazines which I used to find very interesting and I could spend hours reading were around people, leadership, management, culture. So I spent a lot of time, reading those magazines. And then we had very strong organizational behavior faculty at IIM Ahmedabad. One of the most interesting courses we do is a course called ERI, which is Explorations in Roles and Identity. And it's a very interesting program. So a bunch of you, 30-ish, go off in a place where you're not contactable and you just talk. You just talk about yourselves, your life, and, all your experiences. Because our faculty was so good, many of the insights people had in that program was so powerful that it changed their lives. And when I watched that, I was like, hey, this is exactly what I am going to do. I'm going to be spending my life in, this field because I think it has a power unlike anything else that I've seen. I mean, of course, if you interview someone who loves finance, they'll probably say that's true about finance, but I felt it was so true about the field of organizational development. So from there on, I've sort of stayed in that field. I worked for about 11 years before going for a PhD, to be honest. So I wanted to sort of, explore the field. I took many corporate roles. And then I had this very strong desire to have great expertise in this field. And because I wanted like really great expertise in this field, I thought I just have to go and do a PhD and that to a PhD with some of the, really prominent academics so that I could be sure whether or not it matters to others, I don't know, but I should be sure that if there's something in my field which is important, guaranteed I know about it.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm curious here for people who are running their businesses, right? What can they do to make sure that they have a great culture which inspires and motivates people, according to you?
I'll say something which people very rarely speak about, which is that to be a good leader, you have to do a little work on yourself. Very minimum need to have some degree of self-awareness and understand how you impact the people around because if you don't have a desire to lead, it sort of stops right there. And leadership is not the same as management. They're two different things. Just to give an example, leadership is about making people want to follow you. So, they're inspired by your vision. They're inspired by you as a person, and they feel you have credibility in whatever field, you're working in. They trust you. They trust your character. They can see that you have the kind of qualities which they admire, and they can see your vision. So they want to go where you're leading. That's leadership. Management is an operational issue. It's about, okay, what's the work before us? How do we organize ourselves? Who should be doing what? What should be the metrics? How do we review progress? How do we reward people who are doing well? How do we identify those who are not? So that's the whole other field. And both are very important, actually. If you're a business leader, you need to be a leader so that people are following you, not just because you're the boss and you
Correct.
much have no choice, but because they want to. They feel a certain sense of, inspiration from you. And of course, management, because you will have the mundane to manage, the work processes, the work practices, the work division, the identification of, people who are talented, good performers, giving them good roles. So there is a need for both. And I think it's really helpful for anyone who leads a business to understand, to be honest, both separately and find their own personal cocktail. There is, of course, one more aspect, which is about if you're running an organization, one part of leadership and management is internal. So it is, you can create an organization which is a very well run organization where people are inspired, they want to do what you're saying. But that doesn't necessarily mean that your organization is going to be effective, because you may not actually be, producing the kind of products that your customer wants or the services that your customer wants. So there is an external facing element to being a business leader, which sort of is over and above all of these, which is being able to identify, what is the space in which you're operating? What are the opportunities there? Who could be potential clients? How do you go after them? So there's that whole other piece of the external environment which sort of works on top of this. So if you really want to be a great business leader, there is the part about the business part, what's the opportunity, how you're in sync with that, how you're able to identify that, think of really great ways to be able to service your customer. And then there's the internal part. How do you build a great organization where people are able to perform at a level which they wouldn't under another leader, for instance?
Correct. And when you said that, a leader's, how he can become truly a leader is by self-awareness, right? So how can people become more self-aware? Are there some things that they should do, attend some seminars? How can they become more self-aware?
Assuming that you want to be self-aware, then some easy ways to start off is, frankly, ask people around you, what is it that you do which they feel inspires them? What is it that you do that they feel does the opposite? It can be in your professional capacity, just asking people, what do you think? What do you think I do well? Are there things that I don't do well that I can do better? So there's that part. That does, of course, require a little bit of humility. Maybe you don't want to hear. Maybe you're scared of hearing what they're going to
Fear of judgment, right? End of the day.
And yes, so that's one part. The second part of it is you can actually do a lot of instruments. So there's psychometric tools which, you do the instrument, you read what the outcome says. So like everyone does in these magazines or pop-up quizzes, right? What kind of something are you, right? What kind of...
Yes, I keep doing that once in a while, every now and then.
what kind of, friends are you, whatever. So,
Yeah.
That's pop part of it. But actually, there are pre-established instruments which help you get a sense of, okay, if I do ABC, what does that say about my personality type and what are the implications of that? So you can do that. And ideally, you should have somebody else you can reflect that with, because that other person, sees things that you don't see, someone who knows you well. So they'll help you make sense of, okay, this says I'm, say, introverted. And, someone who knows you well could say, I can't even tell. So there are pieces which and then there are pieces which get reflected in your interaction. So it's helpful to get a little bit of both perspective, that this is who I am at my core, and this is how it plays out in the external environment. So that's a second way. So those are some of the.
I personally believe, the importance of having mentors and coach in your life, because at the end of the day, they help you, identify things that you at times just don't recognize your own patterns, right? So we at times tend to, forget that, but if the other person is looking at you, he certainly makes more sense. In your case, who were your mentors? Who guided you?
So I didn't have too many mentors. There were people whom I admired and I learned a lot from. So in the first 10 years, I remember one thing I used to often tell people who were doing something that I thought was really cool. I used to tell them, just know I will copy you by watching you once. So I was a really good copycat. If you did something in my field, which I was really interested in, I just have to see you a couple of times doing it and I would be able to get it. So whether it was someone who's working as a consultant and being able to work with a leader to help them come up with insights, or whether someone was, leading a workshop or whatever it is that they were doing, I used to tell them very often that I was a copycat, but I don't think I really had mentoring relationships. So I think it's great if you can possibly develop them. It really, really helps.
Absolutely. When it comes to your own experience, right? You had a working experience 11 years and then you moved out of that, become a consultant. How was your personal experience? What were some of the challenges you faced and how did you come out of it? Because there are many people out there, right, who want to start their own business, they're passionate towards something, but they get stuck in the corporate life, don't have the courage at times. So what can they learn from you also, and we can become a copycat?
Well, I think our business is still growing, so there's no way I could say I've done it. I'm still doing it. I would say that. I think in our field, because I'm a consultant, having strong credentials and credibility is frankly really, really important. Because first of all, people have to trust that you know what you're talking about. Otherwise, you're not even on the table for discussions, right? For any project or anything, you don't exist if you don't have credibility, credentials. I think it really helps to have a solid reputation. That's one part which I think is really, really helpful. The other thing is, I think the part you said about, how do you take a leap?
Yeah.
Faith, right? You don't know when you take a leap of entrepreneurship where you will land. You really don't know. So you have to have a very strong pull, or some very strong reason to do it. Because I can tell you, it's not easy. It's really not easy. I wanted to, I'd been in this field for long enough to know that I really get it. I really get it. And I wanted an openness of playground, almost, to be able to create new solutions, work with a variety of clients in different ways, and not get bound by the operational aspects of, what a business HR role requires. So I didn't want to be in that box. I wanted to be creating my own solutions while working with clients. And to be honest, I wanted to build a career for 20 years. And, if I wanted to build a career for 20 years, I felt that, having a strong consulting practice which allows you to really contribute to clients, that's the kind of career which you have control over, to develop the business, to develop consulting solutions, to develop new ideas, to be a thought leader. On the other hand, if you're working in a business HR role, organizations can change. And, it's not clear. Nobody can today say that you will have a very long career in any particular role. You don't know. The world is changing so fast.
True.
So I wanted control over my career. So I had very strong reasons. I wanted the creative space because I really felt that I'd sort of paid my dues. I'd done if there's anything to be learned and studied, I had done it from the best places. So I was absolutely confident that if there's an important idea, I know it. I've worked for long enough within organizations, so I was really confident that if I'm working with a client organization, I understand what it would take to implement those ideas. It's not just a theoretical perspective. I get it. I get it. I've been there. I've done many of the things I speak about, so I get what it would be to, work with some of those solutions. And I did think that waiting would be of any use, frankly, whatsoever. But it was, even then, it was scary.
Yeah.
Like, first day zero for any entrepreneur is frightening.
It's the toughest, the first is always the toughest. You mentioned in the beginning that having a reputation is very important. How do you build that reputation in the market?
I think, firstly, I think reputations take years to develop. So for any young person, I would say don't underestimate the impact you're having even in your 20s on how people will view you in your 40s, 50s, and beyond. Sometimes you're really surprised. Sometimes it's someone who you worked with 20 years ago who spreads the word around, saying that it was a positive experience or whatever. So you have to be solid in whatever you do, and there is no particular shortcut other than being really, really good at what you do. And if you're really, really good at what you do, day after day, year after year, people will talk. They will talk to each other before you will get to know, actually. They will talk to each other, good or bad. Either way, they will talk about you. And the most powerful references are what people give others, when you're not in the room, and what they say about you. So that really, really matters. Be conscious of that. I wasn't as conscious of it in my 20s. But by my 30s, I began understanding that relationships you develop in your 20s, or even work you did in your 20s, never completely goes away. It sort of finds a way to catch up with you eventually, good and bad both. So every day, get up, truly do your best.
Okay. And you've also written a book, The Secret Life of Organization. So I'm just wondering, what exactly, if you had to give a quick insight of that book so that people can go grab that book and learn more about it, what exactly does that book talk about?
So that book is meant for professionals who are trying to be successful in the organizational world. Because me and my co-author Pratnya Parashar have been both on, in executive HR roles as well as on the other side. We've been academics, done our PhDs, worked with clients. We thought that we have insights into how promotion decisions happen, talent decisions happen, recruitment decisions happen, how people get critical roles, So we had insights into the practical aspect of how those conversations take place. And we had the other piece, which is, insights from academia and what is it that we can understand about organizations from there. So we wanted to create a sort of manual or a guidebook, if you like, for people to read and say, okay, how organizations really work. And this is how, therefore, I can understand and build my career around that. So we wanted this to be like a guidebook to, you want a career in an organization, read the book, understand what's culture, how does that work, how do you listen to stories within an organization, understand yourself, and how do you navigate career decisions, working with, critical people in the organizations, including your boss, and how do you make thoughtful career decisions that are going to be true for you, not for anybody else, but for you. That's what's going to get you to a place of, feeling good about your success. So that's what this book is about.
People who are coming out of college, let's say, or people who are also already working, right, and they want to switch jobs, go to a different company, how important is choosing the right organization for them? And how do somebody find what's the right organization for them?
So I'll tell you what finding the right organization will do.
Mm-hmm.
If you're in the right environment, you will find yourself doing things that you didn't expect you could do. So it sort of enhances your game. That's really, what the best places will do. You would do 2x, 3x, 10x in those environments compared to a regular organization. Uh, those places will often allow you to grow by giving you space and by having enough role models internally that you can learn from, either as mentors or just simply being a copycat, So a really good place for you, as an individual fit, will allow you to play your game at a whole other level. So it makes a huge, huge difference. But it's not so easy to, necessarily know what that is right off the bat. So some things that I think are helpful are speaking to people who work in a variety of different organizations and get a sense of what it's really like to work there. Uh, what's the culture like? What are the focus areas for that organization? What's the kind of space people get within that organization? And use those informal conversations. And of course, you can read through Glassdoor. That's a good source as well. When you go through the process of interviewing recruitment, if you get into that funnel in the first place, I think it's really helpful to sort of every time you go for a meeting, come back and reflect, feel in that environment. Did it feel like a match, or did you feel like, okay, it's a good place for many people, but I was really uncomfortable there. Somehow it just didn't, sort of sit well with me. So think about that. Reflect on how it made you feel on the inside. Did you feel energized? That's always a really good question. When you met them, did you feel energized? The physicality of that experience gives you cues which your logical mind will find, excuses for. So supposing it's a big brand, you will say, oh, but big brand name, big role, whatever. But on the inside, our conscious mind is only aware of a much smaller subset of signals than our subconscious mind is. So it's really helpful to think about whether those conversations energized you, whether they drained you, what was the general resonance that you had with that organization. In my career, about 2001 or so, I joined an organization called MAFO Management Consultants. It was an HR consulting cum recruitment company and was still in its early stages, so wasn't a huge brand compared to many other organizations. When I met with people in the organization, I just had this strong sense of I belong here. It was just a very instant sense of I just belong here. And I found that being in an environment where you feel you belong, it allows you to do things you didn't think you could do otherwise. So it takes your game to another level. And I think that's very, very helpful. You could, of course, also join an organization which sometimes is a really big brand name. But just be aware that for you to be able to do your best work, there'll be a certain environment which will bring that out. So if you're a young person or even an older person at any age thinking about what organization to join, there are both aspects to it. There is the external image and branding part, which signals to the outside environment, many things about you. But there's equally the whole part of, do you have a strong resonance? Because for your absolute best game, you need an organization which you're absolutely in sync with. Otherwise, it's a very stressful experience. Even if it looks good on your resume, it's a very stressful experience to work. And you may not have the opportunity to bring your A game there.
Since you are an organization expert, right, you would have seen a lot of organizations. What are some of the, common challenges organizations face? And how can they overcome that? So that a business leader, if I'm running an organization, How can I solve any common challenges that arises in the company?
At the end of the day, it boils down to just a few things, which are so difficult to get right, but they are actually a handful of things, and some of which I spoke about earlier. If you're a business leader, do you have a good sense of where the world is headed? And what are the business opportunities within that? That's your business acumen. And you have to have it or develop it. It's like, if you don't have that, you can do a lot of things and you'll have a happy organization, but not very successful. So particularly now, because the world is changing so fast that you can't really, leadership has changed. So in a very steady state, say 20 years, 30 years ago, it was, sailing in a smooth sea. So if the navigation is set, you pretty much don't have to worry about anything. You just make sure that your ship is running smoothly, the crew is happy, and you're on course. But today, to be a business leader is much more like navigating through very stormy seas. And that's another set of skills. So you have to read the skies, read the waves, read the winds, understand what these mean for your organization, have the understanding of how your response needs to be crafted. So, just like if you're in a stormy sea, your captain has to have a sense of what's the right response for different, kinds. You have to do that. And then while you're responding to this, you have to set course on, okay, so for you, what's the right direction? Because now those directions are changing very, very rapidly. So there's that whole part. It's incredibly hard to do, but it's really, business acumen is at the heart of it. So if you don't have that, really, you don't have anything. But that's one part of it. The other part, beyond business acumen, is knowing how to set your internal organization. And that's about the whole leadership and management space. Having the ability to craft a vision, where are we headed, communicate that vision well to your organization, have that element of inspiration. It's very rare, to be very honest. Most organizations have not more than 5 or 10% of their leaders who are inspiring. But wherever you have inspiring leaders, it completely changes the level at which everyone within your team is playing. So that's why I say it makes a huge difference on productivity, on kind of effort that you get. So that creating that space for people to be truly inspired by you, your motivation, that requires a little bit of inner work. It requires self-awareness, which we spoke about. It requires a desire to be a leader, which means that if I want to be a leader, I know I have to have credibility in my field, right? Whatever it is I do, I can't be like an OD leader if I know nothing about the field. So whatever you're in, you have to have some credibility in that field, whether it's an industry level credibility, whether it's a professional level credibility, functional specific, whatever it is. You have to have credibility in something that people care about, right? Otherwise, why should they listen to you? They need to feel that you have some of the qualities that they admire. Nobody's God, nobody's perfect, but at least some qualities that they admire. And those are, can I trust you, for instance? Can I trust you as a person? Are you generally a person who would sort of, in the broader sense, have our back? Would you? Can I trust you? Do you have courage? Can I see that in you? So there are a basket of many admirable qualities, but you have at least some of them that people can connect to and say, okay, this leader I can get behind. And if you have that magical combination, then it truly takes everyone's game to the next level. So you have to have that desire. It doesn't, like, nobody drops into an organization and is born a leader, except maybe a very, very rare, exceptional human being. And there are a few of those, but there are very few of those. So most people have to develop it. And you develop it if you want to develop it. If you don't want to develop it, you will never make that effort. But that effort is inner work. So it requires a little bit of inner work. That, how do I ensure I have credibility? How do I ensure I have cultivated myself personally, very individually, some qualities, character qualities that are worth admiring, for others. And then, of course, the whole management piece. Then Do I understand how to the mechanics of it? How do we organize ourselves so that the work gets done? So those are the three big buckets: the business acumen piece, the leadership piece, the ability to manage. Now, sometimes one leader cannot have all of them. It is possible. Certainly, the first two you can't do without. The third, you can hire a COO or have a partner, who can complement you in management part of it, operations part of it, someone who gets the mechanics of how to organize ourselves so that work happens consistently at a very high level. You can maybe complement. Does that sort of answer your question?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I want to ask you this. What are some of the great books people could read on leadership which would help them grow?
Um, so Warren Bennis is a writer on leadership who I find very helpful. He's got a couple of different books. I think it's called On Being a Leader or Becoming a Leader, one of these. He's a good person to read. What I like about him is he addresses things that people are hesitant to speak about. The whole character piece that I spoke about, the fact that in the end, if you want to be a leader, you have to do some work. You have to do some work. You have to do some work in your profession to have credibility. You have to do some work internally to have some character traits, etc. He speaks about. Almost nowhere do people speak about it. These are almost taboo subjects because, we sort of pretend it doesn't matter, but actually it matters a great deal. So I think I like him for that reason. Now, one practical book for managers who are working in a variety of difficult situations is Ben Horowitz's The Hard Thing About Hard Things. So that's just practical tips, but I think that's very it's good advice. So that really helps. So there are a variety of these, kind of sources. But I also think you can learn about leadership through many other sources. Like, Diwali was this weekend, and I'm not terribly religious, to be honest, but I was reflecting on how the Ramayana has so many amazing leadership lessons. Just imagine you're exiled, you're in a forest. Now you have to raise an army. Nothing. How many people do you have to inspire to follow you, right? To create that whole army which goes then. So the whole piece of character, credibility, vision, inspiration, motivation, there's so many lessons there. And that's not the only book. There's so many books, movies, literature. Often literature or movies touch you because, they're characters you can connect with. So there's a lot to learn about leadership outside of leadership books as well.
Interesting. Once I was going through, I keep often getting your LinkedIn posts, right? So there I saw, you and Ashish Vidyarthi are coming up with something unique. So I don't know, that may be a secret, but would you like to shed some light on that?
I can't say much about it, except that both are looking at, how can we help leaders develop qualities that would make them future ready. So that's the space that we are creating something in. More
Interesting. Fair enough. Now, this is the last question that I ask almost all my guests on the podcast. Okay. Imagine that, you've done whatever you wanted to achieve so far, right? You've written books, you've become an expert in your field, and you've accomplished everything you wanted. And true, it is, but it's just imagination, right? End of the day. So imagining that you've done it all, right? And today is your last day on planet Earth, and there are only two suggestions that you can give your kids. What those two suggestions are gonna be?
Live with courage and compassion, frankly. And your life has to make the world better. I mean, I sound sometimes very naively idealistic, but I'm not. I believe that. Like in all the work I do, I keep asking myself, will this help the world in some way. So even our conversation today, when you reached out to me, it's really at the back of my mind. If I do this, will this help the world in some way? Maybe in some tiny way, someone will hear it and maybe get one or two ideas that they might find helpful. So I think that we're here only for some time. And you said that right at the start. I do feel, I'm very conscious of the fact that we're sort of all passing through. It's just, it's a short journey as well. So what are we doing in our own individual personal capacity? So for me, for instance, my profession is a big tool for trying to make the world a better place. It's a very energizing feeling to have, at least for someone like me. It gives a context for deciding what to do and what not to do. And that's a very nice, okay, do this, don't do this kind of. So find whatever works for you, but have this one or two, like Mahatma Gandhi had, that decision-making mantra, does this, think of the weakest person and does this help them? So that was his decision-making mantra. So think of something which works for you personally, which will help you decide through the course of the millions of choices you're going to make every day. How will you choose what you do and what you don't?
That's perfect. Shani, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure talking to you because I personally learned a lot, with regards to a lot of things that, at times I, each and every single interaction I have with people like you, there's something unique that you guys tell, right? Which has an impact on me personally. And I also believe people who are going to be listening to our podcast will also, get something out of this message of yours, wherein, they could learn and implement in their lives, which could, help them go to the next level. So I really appreciate it and thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me here.
My pleasure.